More medications, less health. Something's broken. Traditional medicine manages symptoms, but true healing addresses root cause. I'm Josh Rimini, pharmacist turned healer. At Beyond the Pills, we merge ancient wisdom with modern day science to inspire you through stories of transformation, practical trainings, and holistic healing. Join me and other practitioners as we guide you towards vibrant health, body, mind, and spirit, and move beyond symptom management into true healing. Welcome back, folks, to Beyond the Pills. My name is Josh Rimini, pharmacist turned healer, and your host. And today we have a special guest, Dr. Stephanie Byerly. She's a neuro and obstetrical anesthesiologist, a woman's empowerment and leadership coach, trauma-informed practitioner who spent more than 25 years in the academic medicine before transitioning into private practice and coaching. She's the former professor of anesthesiology and pain management. Dr. Byerly has numerous leadership roles, including chief of staff, chief of anesthesiology, chief of obstetric and anesthesiology, and chair of the American Society of Anesthesiologists Committee on Women Anesthesiologists. Beyond the medicine. This is the Beyond the Pills podcast. She is a certified life and professional coach with an associate certification in coaching designation from the International Coaching Federation, so bona fide coach, and advanced training in feminist and women-centered coaching. Her work helps high-achieving women awaken from years of emotional anesthesia and reconnect with joy, presence, and authentic leadership. Shaped by an early childhood trauma and a later abusive marriage, Dr. Byerly came to recognize how trauma often unconsciously draws people into helping professions and how that same pattern can lead to burnout and emotional numbness. Today, through her private coaching practice, she guides women to heal, feel, and lead from wholeness because, as she says, life is beautiful when you can feel it again. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, it's great. I love reading these because it's such a great primer for me. Like even that place around like your patterns helping you move to who you've become and all that. We'll get into all that.
Yeah.
But your career spans decades in medicine and now in leadership. And I don't meet a lot of people that have kind of crossed that barrier and done that. Like there's parts of us that have done that. But before we talk about coaching and awakening, like, let's talk about your story and who you were before you realized you had been living in this emotional anesthesia.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Excited to tell my story because I think it helps people understand that there's so much that we don't know that's going on in the background, and how when we start to understand our life and the impact that it's had, and if we want things to be different, that it is possible. So I came from a childhood when my mother had severe mental illness and had been married 5 times. Started out where I was sick as a kid and in the hospital a lot, and saw healthcare workers as these noble individuals who are taking care of people, healing them. And I think my nervous system sensed from the day I was born that I was in a very unsafe environment. And this is no blame to my mother. I know, she did her best. She had her own struggles, but it put me in harm's way in a lot of the time. But there was a student nurse, and I wish that I knew her name or who she was, but she befriended me, and we would go around. I was 4 years old at night, and we'd fill the oxygen tents with ice in the pediatric ward. If you had to sleep in this oxygen tent, and I remember that. And she would come find me, and we wheeled the little cart around. And a year later, I had to have a tonsillectomy. Somehow she knew. And when I woke up in the tonsillectomy ward, there was a little plastic doctor bag sitting on my nightstand, the kind with the plastic stethoscope and the little
Yep.
pills and
My
all this.
kids have them.
Yeah, and so I guess she knew, and my sister will tell me that every day when she came home from school, we had to play doctor, and I had to listen to her heart and examine her and all of this. And then things got drastically worse in my childhood, and my mother had separated my sister and I, and we moved to Florida. And during one of her marriages, there was a lot of abuse, including sexual abuse for me, abuse for my mom, and just a lot of things. And
Mm.
if you know about the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey,
The
the
ace,
highest,
yes.
yes, the highest you can get is a 10, and my score is a 9. And I really want people to understand that you're not your ACEs score, and we can talk about that more later.
Yeah.
But that led to a lot of things in my life that I certainly didn't understand. But I had to start working at 15 to pay my mother rent. And that was a blessing in disguise because it really helped me with my work ethic. But also, I think, really started my passion for helping women because I went to work at a national fast food chain and I told them I wanted to be a cook. And they said, women don't cook, they're only cashiers. And I said, well, you just watch me. And so I became the first female cook. Followed my passion and became a physician. Thought I had met, this most wonderful individual, got married, and that was another form of severe abuse that occurred. And I didn't know, really that a lot of it stemmed from previous trauma and how didn't understand what healthy relationships were. Um, were so from that, I started on my healing journey and also have a younger daughter who is amazing, but has had a lot of challenges in her life from the day she was born. And I knew I had to go on my healing journey because after getting divorced, I was in these leadership roles at work and I knew I wasn't being effective and I was very reactive. I didn't understand why. I was like, what is wrong with me? Right. Like I've achieved all these things. I decided that my life was not going to look anything like what I saw growing up and that my children's lives were not going to be anything like what I experienced. And then I was like, goodness, I have to figure this out. And so I knew my younger daughter was going to have a lot of struggles. And so I went on this journey and met some amazing practitioners and started doing something called psychodrama. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm. Yeah.
And so, so imagine spending 3 days with a group of trusted individuals who've all experienced a lot of trauma. And here we are recreating our trauma on a stage. And the facilitator, who is this amazing woman, she was a shaman, previous RN. She asked me, why did you become an anesthesiologist? And I gave her all the usual reasons. I want to help people, and I'll never forget, she was standing over me and she said, Stephanie, why did you become an anesthesiologist? And I said, Shirley, I guess I don't know. Can you please tell me? Because by now I'm like, I don't know. And she's
Right.
like, you have been numb every day of your life. So what do? You make people numb every day when they're having the most horrific things done to their body. And if you want to talk about a light bulb moment where my mind was blown, I thought back and it was like this cascade of memories. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm physically present, but mentally never present. And I just realized I'm like, she's completely right. And everything shifted for me. And this was 20 years ago. And so people were not talking about the effects of trauma. So I started understanding about my trauma, but still did
Yeah.
not understand the nervous system effects and all of this. And so continued on my healing journey. And then when we had to do an intervention for her addiction, it was an intervention for my life as well. And they told me during her recovery that I had some of the most severe trauma they had ever heard about and that I needed to have trauma therapy. And that was the next piece that was life altering for me. I had EMDR therapy with an amazing,
Yeah.
amazing practitioner, and that changed my life. And then I thought there's got to be something more because I've gone through burnout as a physician. I've had so many life experiences. I want to help women in a different way. And I specialize in taking care of really sick pregnant women. And I thought maybe I should go to Africa and take care of pregnant women. There's something more. It was these voices,
Mm,
constantly
yeah.
knocking at the door. And people were like, "What do you mean you're a physician? Why do you have to do anything else?" And a friend of mine, I was talking to her and she said, "You need to be a coach." And this was in 2020, early 2020. And back then in medicine, coaching was something that was punitive.
Right.
So you never got a coach unless you were a disruptive physician. But now this whole new area was opening up about coaching, and I read about it. I'm like, this is it. Like, I knew this was the missing piece. And so I got certified as a life coach, and then the momentum just started even more and more. And I published many papers about women anesthesiologists and women physicians, and it just started to steamroll. And that's when I did my advanced feminist coaching certification and learned about all of the deep things, the socialization of women of color, and how this affected us. And so I continued on this coaching journey, and then became a trauma informed coach. I wanted to find out more because I realized that every single client I had, the basis of things were trauma that they didn't understand. So I wanted to get this coaching certification. And then that opened a whole new world of being a trauma informed coach. And then really wanted a deeper understanding for women. So I'm in this long mentorship with a woman named Dr. Claire Zamet, who is amazing. And so it's kind of steamrolled into this. And now even going further into really connecting back to my sacred divine feminine, a piece that has really been anesthetized due to
Mm.
really living in a very masculine world and having lived my life in a very masculine way, which was needed, but trying to really work on bringing back some of the pieces that I lost of the divine feminine, sacred divine feminine.
I love it. The journey, right? There's
Hmm.
so much. Like, I had all these questions for you, but you've already like you've piled through most of them. Like the ACE experience, the connection
Yeah.
of that. Um, Thank you for sharing all of that, because
It-
when we move, a lot of people, there's a lot of talk about trauma now. Like, it's been open. Like, there's many ways to work with it rather than just be a buzzword, right? It's like we can look under the hood in different ways.
Mhm.
And I love how you've kind of brought your own experience into that space of like being unconsciously drawn to anesthesia, like to your own, and it's a different way of looking at it, because I think when I've talked to a lot of people, because this is we're talking about healing here. We're not talking about like sick care medicine. This is a healing modality of like
Mhm.
taking trauma and like not not eradicating it like we do with diseases, but like we're healing it so we can live. We can heal it so we can wake up that body and wake up to be living in this world. And I love how you had those few moments that said there's something else here. I'm learning in, I'm leaning in, I'm saying yes to these things that are calling me. And
Mhm.
I've I've talked through this with a lot of people that have gone through the traditional medical route in different ways, and have sort of become coaches and become like moving towards healing modalities. I've studied them all over the world. And I love your I just wanted to take like pause and honor like how like how so many people that get into like medicine or become a physician or become, like, for me, a pharmacist, how I want to get a little bit more deeper on
Mhm.
like how do you think so many healers learn or want to care for others
Mhm.
before they learn how to care for themselves?
Yeah. It's really fascinating to me because if you think about, is medicine a calling, or are you called to medicine? So is it something innate in you, or is it a combination? And so when you look at the ACEs survey, people who have a score of 4 or more are more likely to go into helping professions. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we were not nurtured, we were not cared for in a way where you felt safe. And so,
Right.
you look to help other people feel the way that you did not, or the sense that you did not of having safety. And there's recent studies to show that if you go into medicine, speaking physicians specifically, but certainly called to nursing and so many of the other professions in medicine, if you have a score of 4 or more, you're more likely to go into psychiatry and you're more likely to go into academic medicine. It's so interesting. But the other pieces of this, which are fascinating, which more studies need to be done, but it also shows that if you have an ACEs score of 4 or more as a physician, that you are more likely to become burned out.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, wow, like what is it about us that leads to that? But to really understand, yes, like what makes you decide you're going to sacrifice yourself for others. Now, we truly, as you know, we start on this journey and we don't truly understand what that means until you're actually in it. But when I look around and I see what all the healthcare professionals are doing, and I'm like, gosh, we're running around and we are sacrificing our own well being for others.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a mindset that so many of us have, that it is built in that that's what we're supposed to do. And that is a big part of what's harming healthcare workers, in my opinion. But I really think that medicine calls us, rather than really it's a calling for us per se. There's something that draws us to these helping professions.
I just think it's a great, because you know, in the shamanic world, you call it the shamanic journey, which is literally like something happens in your life that you almost die, you come back from death, you rebirth, and then the calling,
Mhm.
like the medicine, comes to you to share with others. You're called,
Mhm.
you're answering the calling because the medicine found you. And I love how you kind of brought it into like it's the wounded healer's journey, right? We become, but I love your aspect on that. I'm like that, the nature versus nurture component of it, because yeah, the other side of it is you go to pharmacy school, you go to medical school, you go to nursing school, like you're taught, like you're wired, like there's a wiring that happens in our
Mhm.
education that says like if you're not on the edge of burnout, you're not going to make it. Like the residency programs, right? We're burning them out to share that. So it's almost like that double-edged sword. You got into it
Mhm.
because you were already wounded and you don't really have the mechanisms, which, at some point too, it's like, it's almost like a blessing and that curse thing, right? It's like
Mhm.
if you're wired to help people, but now I've had to go through my own journey of like really practicing self-care, and
Yeah.
it's intentional for me because I'm default to helping others before me. I'm defaulted to that. We are.
Yeah.
And it does make us very empathic. It makes us very good healers. It makes us good practitioners, even in medicine, because we can be empathic to people, and we can only do it from a place of self fullness, right? And
Mhm.
when our batteries are charged and we're overflow, then we can serve. And that's been a practice of journey and discovery for me. So I'm glad that you're enlightening that towards this whole process in your light, in your way.
Yes, absolutely. Because, medicine is a great way to be distracted from your life, and you can spend almost an entire day, dealing with your patients, and then the rest of your life really falls apart. And I don't think we talk enough about the traumatization of healthcare workers and what we see every day, and what we do to people every day. And I'm grateful that I am a trauma informed coach and have a group to process things with, because there's things that happen, vicarious trauma, where I might not even see a patient, but I hear about their history.
Mm,
And even if it's not happening to you, but you hear it, your brain processes it as if it's primary trauma happening to you. And so the whole cycle starts. And so even just hearing about a patient, let alone seeing what has happened to them, gets imprinted on us as primary trauma. And we don't understand that and what that does to our nervous system and how we show up in every part of our life, every minute of the day, which also affects our physiology and the development of chronic diseases and all of the things.
Well, I love this part. I had this maybe 6 months ago, like this download, this epiphany that I had around because my ACE score is pretty high. Like I've had
Mm,
traumas throughout my whole childhood from
mhm.
two through almost adulthood. And so I've been very curious on that space. This has definitely enlightened me. But like that's when I had this thought, I was like, you know what? I've worked in a pharmacy since I was 15 years old,
Mm.
and knowing more about energy work and energy medicine and where the body keeps the score and all these things that we know in the scientific
Yeah.
world now. This isn't just woo. And I was like, you know what? I've been carrying the energies. And when you're empathic, you bring it in, right? So there's like the space of being highly sensitive and you can bring, but like sick people have sick energies, not because they are projecting it on you, but they're coming to you to be well. And so I was thinking about it, was like being empathic and understanding people on a deep level and pulling in all of that type of thing in not in the conscious realm, but like in going like, oh my gosh, how many thousands of people have I just it's not their fault, but like I've that part takes that toll on you. And I was like, oh, it's
Right.
not just me, it's my environment of Matt. That's why I think the question I had was rooted around that, but it was more of like the burnout in medicine is so high because we also are taking on everybody else's, energetics to it,
Mhm.
which you and I both know we're not quite there where we're addressing that yet in the
Right.
workplace, but it's so needed. And this is why I feel very passionately around the 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 retreat work that I do rooted around healing the healers, like
Absolutely.
healing medical providers. They need this just to help them from not even what is going on with them, but what's going around in their environment. So I'm glad you're bringing this to your light. It's really helpful for me.
Yeah, I really saw so much of this recently. I get called to the emergency room when there's a trauma that comes in case they have to come to the operating room emergently. And I intentionally do not look in the room when they're resuscitating a patient because I just don't want that visual in my brain. And I'm always just so moved by the paramedics who have taken care of these people, the EMTs, right, who were the first responders and they see horrific things. And then they just walk out and go to their the next thing they have to do. And I just look at them and I just think it really hurts my heart to really think about the walls that they must have to put up and the armor to be able to go in and do the things they do and see the things that they see and how they function in their lives and have any kind
Yeah,
of
just to function. It's a form of
yeah.
it's PT, it's trauma, right? It's big.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have a good
Yeah.
friend that's been a paramedic, and we're talking physical trauma here, like things that are, most humans should not be able to witness or experience, and they're the ones saving those people, right?
Yeah.
And doing their
Yeah.
best. And then somehow, some way, this is part of that calling, I think, is what we know now with all the tools we have. I really am hopeful and feel that this is part of the equation of what we can do for people to just help them function in their job and in their lives because they've
Yeah.
chosen this path,
Yeah.
or maybe the path's been chosen for them. It's up to them, but it's not just I go to work every day, deal with some tough stuff, and then I go home. It's like there's a carrying of that weight that I think what we're talking about now is solutions based,
Mhm.
where I hope it just becomes a standard of care for these people that are in these professions, paramedics and first responders and
Yeah.
trauma, ER and everybody that's in this space. because yeah, this there's an empathy here for this kind of work that we now know takes a bigger toll than we thought. And now here you are helping
Mm,
people in this space and moving through that in the best possible way. And you've worked in a lot of these realms.
mm.
You've also
Yes.
worked at the highest levels of academic medicine, but also leadership, and empowerment. And what do you like? And especially with women, like that's been your. I always firmly believe your avatar, the people you work best with, is the person you were, right? Like I love men's work. I love helping men go into their divine masculine, moving from their head into their heart. And it's like, well, if I really look at it, I love that. Again, same thing consciously or subconsciously, but from that, like the almost like the regenerative side of it is like you work well with women because that's what you went through. So you can be empathetic. I'm a cancer survivor at 16. So I work
Mhm.
with people just because they're drawn to me and I can deeply feel for them in a good way. So with women too, like what additional pressures and barriers do women face? Because this is who you work with too, and it's really important that push them towards that numbness of embodiment.
So if we look at, women in general, and I'm just going to start by saying women of color or any woman with any type of marginalized identity, everything that I'm going to say is amplified for them in ways that you and I can't really understand. But when we talk about women in general in the workplace, we have to realize how women are socialized, meaning what is my internal programming? What did I see with my family of origin, my epigenetics? What did it look like? The role of a woman, a mom, an older sister, an aunt. We have to remember social media, right? All the things we see, and women are programmed. And by the time you're 9 or 10, you already know the box that you have to live in, the cage,
Mhm.
actually, I call it, because when you were a carefree little girl running around and there was no labels yet, you didn't worry about how you looked or how much you would talk or, things like this. But by the time you're 9 or 10, you already know I should be smart, but not too smart. And I should be pretty, but not too pretty. I should be this, but not this, because you've already been told.
Mm.
And so, really thinking about that programming, and you also start to be indoctrinated into women are not good leaders, women are not good with money, women are not good with investing, women are here to procreate, but they're here for the purpose of men. It's all about my body. I should look a certain way, talk a certain way, act a certain way. So if you think about that, that's a lot that's always constantly going on in our subconscious. Additionally, men are socialized. Again, there's no blame here. This is just discussing the waters that we swim
It's
in.
the program.
Men are socialized to believe that women are not good leaders and that they're all about their body and that they're not good with money and that men are supposed to protect women. So all these things are going on in the background, and we don't realize that so often the way it shows up is this unconscious gender bias. But the some objective things in the workplace, so for women physicians in general make less than men. I was on the hugest study in the committee of women anesthesiologists, and with everything controlled for in the study, every possible variable, women anesthesiologists make $35,000 less a year than male anesthesiologists. And all women physicians make less money, especially in the primary care setting. Women get promoted less to professor. There's hardly any women deans. They're usually associate deans there or chairs of departments. Women get less grants, less keynote speaking. And there's more, but and then we talk about the microaggressions. So not to offend anybody, but getting called a nurse or getting called by your first name or comments about your body. And I had a patient. I walk in the room every day to introduce myself the same way. I'm Dr. Byerly. I'm going to be your anesthesiologist. And this patient said, "Are you a nurse anesthetist?" And I said, "No, sir, I'm a physician." And he said, "Are you a physician assistant?" And I said, "Sir, I am an MD. Do you have any other questions about my credentials? But this is the kind of microaggressions that occur on the daily. And so if you
Mm,
think about that and then all of the subconscious programming, if you can imagine why there's these internal struggles that women have and they don't understand. Um, and it becomes embodied. It actually becomes your identity because you start to really think, well, maybe I'm not enough. I guess if people are calling me a nurse or by my first name, and I was told as a kid, you're to this, you're to that. And so it becomes your identity. And I'm just going to say this. I love what I do every day, but I do think that medicine is an abusive relationship with healthcare providers.
mm,
And I think that COVID really showed that we will go to extreme lengths to care for others and put ourselves at risk. And so this has even made the abusive relationship worse. And so, all of this is going on, and women get into this vicious cycle of really thinking they're in victimhood. And other examples are that women physicians get really sick patients. So sicker patients are drawn to women like internal medicine, cardiology, because women physicians are more empathetic. I would say not all, but in general, there are studies to prove this. And so what happens is they get overburdened as well. And a nurse might say, hey, can you see this patient? Please just fit this patient in, one more patient. And then, they're like, okay, because they feel like if they actually voice no, they're going to be criticized as being the B word,
mm.
right? Aggressive, because other women do gender bias to other women very frequently. And so, there's so many additional things that occur for women, that the burnout rate is greatly amplified. And sadly, a physician a day kills themselves. So the current statistic is 400 physicians a year commit suicide, which is, I'm sure, greatly underreported. Women have a extremely high rate of suicide, women physicians. It's like just so much higher than for male physicians. It's
Mm.
very it's just devastating. And when you start to think about this, it's just it hurts your heart.
Yeah, and it is deep too. And you talked about epigenetics, and I've studied and experienced, like, when we talk about this stuff, it is multi-generational.
Yeah.
It sticks into the DNA. We know this for fact now. And so let's put some light into this. Is like, what are the solutions? What are the things we can be doing in the present day, but also, like, generationally? How do we unfold epigenetically the proper signals so we can move our way towards a more conscious driven, a more higher higher consciousness, higher vibrational community? Because I feel like that's where we're heading. But, like, in this instance, it's not just the physicians, it's women, it's people of color, it's all people that have had some levels of generational issues, where we're kind of
Mhm.
now underscoring, like, there's this kind of weaving of, like, the science. We're seeing, like, the studies and the epigenetics and all these tools we use, but now we're also understanding, like, how it's imprinted into our coding and how we can kind
Mhm.
of. What are your thoughts about unraveling that?
I think the first piece is for people to actually understand this and start to really think about, okay, this is real. Like, it isn't just that people are talking about big T trauma and little T trauma. And, because I didn't witness something horrific, I shouldn't say that I had trauma. Let's just normalize that we've all had trauma,
Right.
and that, right, it may be primary happening to you. It may be secondary that you've witnessed somebody have trauma, maybe vicarious. You're looking through social media, right? You're doom scrolling. We don't understand that all that gets processed as primary trauma. And so what we see nowadays, right? We see things that 20 years ago we never would have been able to see 24/7, the wars, all the things in politics, all of the racial issues, COVID, all these things. So, in first piece, I think is really understanding what all this means and what part has this played in who you are from a very compassionate way. So, radical self compassion and radical empathy for yourself and how painful it is and what has happened to your nervous system. And I think when we start to just normalize it, first of all, when you normalize it, right, then you feel like you're not being othered and there's not something wrong with you, that
Oh,
you're part
yeah.
of the bigger collective, right? Because we started in tribes, so we want to be accepted by other people, but when we get othered or we think that we're different, we automatically look at ourselves as broken. And so it's normalizing. We've all had trauma. Can we look into this in a non-judgmental way? We're not going back and blaming parents. It's your fault I'm this way. Because until I was about 40, I think I lived in the past of this is all my mother's fault. If my childhood would have been different. And then we have to take radical responsibility for ourselves as individuals and how we can start this healing journey. Because when you actually start with just those simple things, a big weight gets lifted off your shoulders and you realize, wow, this is a very dark place. And now I'm starting to have an understanding of maybe why I show up the way that I do. And looking at people, there's a great book called What Happened to You by Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce Perry, which I think is a great book for people to start to understand trauma because it's all through storytelling. But they say, can we look at individuals and maybe think, what happened to that person rather than what's wrong with that person?
Mm,
And that brings back the humanity between two people because none of us can really understand when we come from, certain walks of life, what other people's lived experiences are every day. And so if we can go to the workplace, even just looking at that and realize that people may be showing up at work in a certain way because of their lived experience and what it took for them to actually get to work. And really start looking at people in this way. Everyone comes to the table with a different lived experience.
yeah, that's I love those touch points that you've enlightened with because it is I think a lot of times people feel like they're they've been they've had trauma to them, like something's happened
Mm.
to them, and then that labeling comes in there, like there's something wrong with me. No, something happened to you that's normal, not
Yeah.
normal good, but norm. Like there's no good or bad. It's just kind of like I've always taken that place of like everything's happens for me to experience so I can learn from it, right?
Yeah.
Now I love what you said is like taking that curiosity, if you almost like of the curious, being curious of what not what's wrong with you, but what happened, right? And
Mhm.
normalizing it means that like we take the we take that heaviness out. Like, yes, trauma work is deep work. It's not easy to come out. And sometimes you don't need to pull it all out. Sometimes there's ways to do it now that you can. And we're moving closer to this, but the human experience is full of. I love how you said it may not have happened to you, may even have witnessed it to somebody,
Yeah.
still brings an imprint. So I love where you say,
Yeah.
like, normalizing it, making it less heavy, talking about it is just, and then, yes, I'm a firm believer of tribes. Like when you have a cohort or people in your pod that you can talk with that aren't going to judge you or say what's wrong with you, that person's been traumatized. Like, no, we all have in some way.
Yeah.
And our nervous systems, I love this is why I love nervous system regulation and everything
Mhm.
about the stress response system because it's been a big part of my life, from a year or two. And some we're all individualized, not just genetically, but also that again, that nature nurture thing
Mm.
is we all adapt and respond and react in different ways, right? Somebody's major thing may have affected them in very different ways. That's why I've been down many rabbit holes of the manifestations of these things happen in different ways. And so not just stress and trauma, but like we're all adapting in different ways. And so, yes,
Mhm.
get deeper understanding. But I love that curiosity, almost like you're more inquisitive of how you can almost look at it from their lens so you can relate to them more. Like you said, like what would it take for that person to just get out of bed and come to work today?
Yeah.
Okay with that rather than like shaming or blaming or criticizing because it's not you. You don't know, you
Yeah.
know? So having that sort of thought process and relationship with people is I feel is a great step for sure.
Yeah, it's cultural humility. And I have to say that, I learned so much of this from one of my mentors, Dr. Kimia Saraf, who started Lodestar Executive Coaching and Consulting. And this is a huge trauma group. And we go into very large healthcare organizations to teach trauma informed leadership, because how different would it be every day when you came to work if people around you were all on the same page as far as this, and really understanding that people come from very different lived experiences, and it doesn't make them bad. And and how do we create this trauma informed way of leading, and how different our lives would be in every area. And I always stress to people, because most people don't understand this, that by the time you were 7, your nervous system had already decided how safe you were,
Mm.
and that and the trauma response, the fight, flight, freeze, or submit, you didn't choose. Your nervous system chose what response was going to be your primary response. And so when we think about that, when we go to work, what if there's somebody who seems like they're not interested with what's going on, and they're not motivated, and we call them lazy and all the things we do? Well, maybe they were in some kind of trauma response when they came to work, and maybe that is freeze, and they're in their response. So how different would it be to understand that? Or if you were from a marginalized identity, and you knew when you stepped into your situation at work that you were automatically being judged differently and you're being othered, that is a form of trauma. And so what does that do to your nervous system when you know you're walking into that situation every day? It puts you on high alert. You're scanning for danger, right? You misinterpret signals, things that are, you may be responding to things in a way that people are like, what is going on here? Like that, what just happened didn't warrant that response. Well, maybe it's because that person's nervous system was activated.
Well, and that's that sympathetic drive, right? The sympathetic is,
Mhm.
we say autonomic, it's automatic, right?
Yeah.
We can learn to regulate, we can do to rewire these things, which is beautiful. Which is why I love neuroplasticity and all these other things that we're starting to unfold. But you did talk about your coaching, and I want to break into this a little bit. Is
Mhm.
especially with the women that you serve and the people that you serve, how let's go into the how now, is like how do you help women in these modalities going from survival and performance and burnout towards this more purpose and presence? Like what are the things that are the tools that you're using in your practice now that can be helpful so people are aware of them?
So I combine several modalities. And when I first start working with a client, we talk about their personality type. And they've been, judged and maybe told they're too much and they need to tone it down and all these kind of things. So we do a personality test, either like a disc profile or positive intelligence, if you've
Yeah.
heard of that, or Enneagram. And we look at that in a very non judgmental way. Like, yes, this was set up by the time you were 7 or 8 years old based on what was happening to you as a child. And that alone, again, takes down the labels, and people start to understand, okay, there's a reason I show up this way. It's gotten me really far in my career and, my life, but I need to now look at all the things and say, hey, maybe there's things I need to change. And then we go into the life piece, life coaching piece, where I give tools, something called a thought model, where we actually realize our thoughts are creating our reality. I teach them about the neuroscience, about, your 60,000 thoughts a day, and Most of them are stories, and your brain is deciding if you're safe or not, right? So we talk about a strategy to actually work through what's happening every day with your thoughts and getting a hold of that. And then we talk about the trauma. Now, we don't excavate trauma. We just talk about how the trauma that most people don't really understand or think was trauma and what that did to them and their nervous system. And we say, how is it affecting you now? And how is it preventing you from moving forward? And we incorporate all of that. And then I bring in my women-centered coaching, where Dr. Claire Zammit talks about every woman, the first three filters that every woman looks through are shame, lack, and isolation. And then there's these 21 inner barriers that we actually operationalize in our life. And the first four are: I'm not enough, I am alone, I'm not visible, or the one that I live in, which is I'm too much. And how, that rules our life every day. So we kind of work with all of this and we say, okay, so now we get all of this. What is the area in your life? What vision area? Is it purpose? Is it prosperity? Is it health? Is it relationships? Is it spirituality? And we start to look at the old story of who you've been told you are, who you think you are through shame, lack, and isolation and all of these barriers. And then we say, what's more true? What is the deeper truth of who you are? And let's create the new story. And for women, it's change at the level of identity. And so we go in and you get to decide now who you are. And we create the new story. We break through the barriers. And for women, it has to be intentional actions, intentional habits. And we build the new story and the new way of being. And then we say, okay, so what's the next area that you really want to start working with? Because once it starts, the momentum, because women start to feel like, okay, I can get some control of this. I can become this person. I'm not stuck in this cage of who I've been told I'm supposed to be anymore.
I love that. Um, how do people connect with you? How do you work with people now? Like what are the things that people, if they're hearing that and they're like, ooh, I'd love to learn more, I'd love to hear more, I'd love to see more, even follow you. Um, what are some ways that people can connect with you and in the ways that work and resonate?
So my website is stephaniebyerly.com. I will mention that I'm going through a big rebranding right now. So the website is kind of a little bit in the making, but there is an area to schedule a breakthrough call, which is an hour-long complimentary call to talk about how I can help. And, if we resonate together to work together. I tell people, I'm not a coach who is going to baby you. So I'm very empathetic and compassionate, but I'm also, when things need to be tough, I'll be tough on you as well. And my social media is all at stephaniebyerlymd.com, which is Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And I also do keynote speaking. I'm really excited about a TEDx talk about trauma that I'm going to be doing in June. So lots of stuff, excited stuff.
I was gonna probe you on that, so you beat
Yes.
me to it. I love the
Yeah.
synergies when people answer the questions naturally that I already gotta ask them. It's like I love this episode. Thank you.
Thank
Um,
you.
I know that I've been going through this TED Talk philosophy. I've been interviewing. I've got past second and third like rounds. Like I'm close too. So tell people a little bit about your idea worth spreading.
So I'm so excited. It has to do with living a life of trauma and coming to the point where a mind-blowing realization that I became an anesthesiologist to help people become numb because I have been numb. And it's really understanding how trauma comes back as a reaction. It's not a specific memory, and how we can begin to feel again, and how that is freedom in your life, and how when you become alive again and you can feel, life is completely different, and it's joy. You start to feel joy again and pleasure and that you are mentally as well as physically present, and you can develop connected, true relationships, and you're not in survival mode all the time.
I love that. It was like, again, it was one of my questions, but you answered. Like, what happens when someone finally gives themselves permission to feel again? It's especially in this way of like the way you've described this whole conversation is beautiful because it's through your story and how I can't wait to hear this TED talk because that emotional numbing, becoming an anesthesiologist and then connecting it back
Mhm.
into the the solutions, the formula for moving out and the only way forward is through and moving
True.
through that. And so I love that you're rebranding. I love that you have this now, you know, with this beautiful wounded healer's journey where you're now helping people at the highest level. So
Yeah.
I honor that. I appreciate the light keepers of this world. And so thank you for participating in your way and sharing your story with such grace. Because I know it's not easy. Like you've
Mhm.
these lives we've lived. I firmly believe, myself included, through my story, is we get to share our stories because people learn and grow through story, but also because this is how the world heals. And so,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
glad that we have this conversation today. Go check her out. Go check out her website. He's Stephanie Byerly, MD, StephanieByerly.com. Check her out if it resonates. I love that you gift that hour. An hour of your time is precious. And having that, this isn't a 15-minute check-in to just get you like an hour is a lot. Like for in this day and age, especially for someone that's a busy anesthesiologist working and coaching and all this thing. So,
Mm.
you know, thank you for the gifts that you're giving and what you're doing for the world. And I no doubt think we will continue our conversations and help the world heal one person at a time.
Yeah. Thank you. And I feel honored to be on your podcast, and thank you for what you do as well, right? It takes a herd of all of us to keep
I firmly believe it. It's these
forward.
conscious Avengers that are coming
Yeah.
out that are moving through this new paradigm of not humanity, and our healthcare system is moving towards these things, like really getting to the human experience. Because when you can feel, we're divine beings living a human experience. Feeling is literally an emotion, the emotion we have, and learning to understand all of it, not just like going towards. We didn't talk about attachment or all that stuff, but like it's learning all of it and being able to be in this world in the way that we can. And so I'm so happy that we were able to connect and have this beautiful conversation. Thanks so much for all that you are and all you're doing.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, we could probably talk for hours, but right now, that's a wrap. Until next time, stay well. Thanks for joining me today on Beyond the Pills. If our mission to de-prescribe 10 million unnecessary medications resonates with you, share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review. Whether you're a practitioner or someone ready to reclaim your health, visit rx2wellness.com for free resources to begin your journey. Together, let's go beyond the pills and co-create a world of vibrant health and true healing. Until next time, live better and stay well.